So let's start it here.
Okay.
We're going to have 3 10-minute videos, and we're going to do 9.5 to 10 minutes per game. You can see the videos subsequently on Twitter on your feed. Okay. First up, Minnesota versus the Galaxy. Who do you start at striker for Minnesota? Angelo Rodriguez or Mason Toye?
Go ahead, David.
Against this LA Galaxy team, I would say Mason Toye.
Yep.
Because I think you've gotten the best. I can't explain why out of Darwin Quintero when that's the case. Also, you want speed to move this back line around. You want to be able to stretch the field on the long side.
The argument for Angelo is that he's a handful when his back is to the goal, and he will actually get out in transition and put his back into a defender and win the ball and allow you to move everybody up on the run. And if he can do that, he could play Ethan Finley through, or he could play Kevin Molino or Darwin Quintero. It's just it hasn't quite happened for him or for them.
It had a span when it was happening. It had that span in the summer when he was very good. They would play the direct balls in. He would post up.
It was like 3 games. 3 games in 2 years from your DP. The line I had about this game going into it is that it is both the most interesting and the least interesting game in the Western Conference playoffs, because it's interesting because it's a coin flip. You could say literally any scoreline about this game, and I would believe you. Galaxy win 4-3. Yeah, that makes sense. They scored 3 early goals, and Minnesota had to open it up, and the Galaxy can't defend, so Minnesota scored 3 goals, and then the Galaxy got a late one because Zlatan is Zlatan. Like, that makes sense. 0-0. Minnesota winning penalty kicks. Yeah, that makes total sense. The Galaxy couldn't do it. Ike and Boxall corralled Zlatan. The Galaxy, there is no rhyme or reason for anything that can happen in this game, and that also makes it not that interesting to kind of break down in advance, because there's no what do you say other than Minnesota's going to try to counter and LA is going to cross it to Zlatan 40 times.
So David alluded where we cut him off right at the beginning about what could be interesting about this game, and that could be how the Galaxy set up their offensive marking plan so that they don't get countered. Because we presume Minnesota are going to sit back behind the ball. We presume that the Galaxy are going to attack, and we presume that the Galaxy are going to send numbers forward, leaving it open for the counter, as you talked about, Matt. How do the Galaxy control the ball? Because they're going to want to control it, right? They're the Galaxy. They have Pavone. They have Zlatan. They need to take the initiative.
Why are they going to have an answer to this now when they haven't had an answer to that for 34 games?
Because
that's
they'll
right.
have to, because Minnesota will make them.
But the beauty of it is...
I'm not saying they'll have an answer, but the way the game states will play out, the assumption is Minnesota will make the Galaxy use the ball to beat them because it makes them more uncomfortable. And we've seen Minnesota do this, I'd say, in the Open Cup, in the semifinals against Portland, at home in a pretty similar scenario where they gave them the ball and asked them to beat them.
But Matt makes a good point. And I want to say the point of the show is not to say what they will do. We've already addressed that. What should they do? And I thought David started to get to it. And how can the Galaxy set up their midfield? Because for me, when you play against a team that is tight, you should attack the spaces wide. Send your outside backs. Jorgen Skjelvik has been, we'll say, up and down in Major League Soccer. He does have an ability going forward with his pace and his left foot.
Yeah, his crossing's terrible, but he gets in the space.
Right. Same with the Rolf Felcher, right? Almost feels like more of an attacking midfielder than a right back at times. But when he gets up, he can do some things.
Skjelvik hasn't been playing, though. Hasn't it been
right? It'll probably, but that's what I'm trying to get at here. Yeah. For me, it should be Skjelvik in this game. Who knows what it'll be? Either way, you have to get up and down those sides, which is interesting because if you look at the middle of the field, their best 3 options there are probably defensive midfielders. And it sounds like Joe Corona isn't going to be fit for this game. But if you play Jonah and Leggett, and then just go with Perry Kitchen or Servando Carrasco, have 5 behind the ball, let Pavone, let Antuna, let Zlatan, let your outside backs attack, and then just keep the 5 to surround Quintero and to surround the center striker to stop those counterattacks. That's how I would set up this game.
Isn't that what the Galaxy should have been doing all year long? Just drop everyone back and say, all right, we have Zlatan and then we have 2 wingers who are going to try to combine with him, and they're going to have to play 3v5, but we think that we have, X amount of talent out there in terms of what those 3 guys can do, and we're pretty confident they'll score 1 or 2 goals a game.
Yeah. They could have done a cool thing. This occurred to me. So I'm reading this book right now about the history of tactics, and it occurred to me that the coolest thing they could have done this year is play a 4-3-1-2 with Zlatan as just the enganche, the number 10, doesn't move, They have an Argentine coach. They have South American influence on the team.
Valderrama Ibrahimovic.
It's too late to say that now, but it would have been cool in retrospect.
Yeah, they've also not had Pavone the entire year, so it's changed a little bit their ability their ability to create with just three. Because before they needed more numbers to be a part of the attack because they just didn't have the individuals to create, although all you're creating is just floating a ball to the far post for Zlatan. But it's changed a little bit since he's come, as well as at that time, Leggett gets healthy and Corona starts to get more comfortable, and they have the ability to control midfield. Like, they have the ability to win that battle. The problem is once they do that, nothing happens from that. So there's no value to it for them, which is bizarre because for every other soccer team in the world, that's as much value as you can get.
Which Quintero shows up? Because isn't that the question here? I did an article today on the most important players for every team, and I opted not to go for Quintero for Minnesota. But if we've already talked about the way they defend, we've already talked about how the center striker is a question mark. Doesn't so much of it come down to Quintero, who at points this season was pretty dang close to Carlos Vela levels, and at points was also closer to Josue Colman levels?
That's a name I didn't expect to hear. I don't know. I thought when he got benched in the Open Cup, he handled it kind of like a pro because he came on in that game and he made a difference, and Minnesota could have at least forced it to extra time. He was good in that game, and he's had moments where he's been really good since then. He's had other moments where he hasn't been, and that goes back to what I was saying almost at the top of this segment. Is anything would make sense to me from this game.
Okay, so I'll say this.
So, yeah, I would say I agree with you in that the way he performs is unpredictable, right? There's no clear, here's Mason Toye starts, so therefore he's comfortable and he plays well. Or the Galaxy leave a lot of space in front of their back line. He uses that space, so therefore he plays well. I don't think there's a formula for that with this. And the other part about this is there's no formula for these two teams to force the other team to play a certain way. Really, outside of Minnesota dropping
it's
so
two
deep.
luggerheads butting heads.
Yeah, so there's no way to say this will be a crazy wrinkle that you expect. It's really just who does it fall for in this game?
You go ahead.
Well, I was going to say just my thought. And acknowledging they have a center striker problem for the Loons, also acknowledging that they have a ton of strength up the middle with your Rookie of the Year runner-up Hassani Dotson. Mm-hmm. Is there a possibility they throw Quintero at the number 9 and they go 3 bustling center midfielders with Hassani Dotson, Gregush, and Alonso?
So Adrian Heath has used that look down the stretch at times, going with a 4-3-3 where it's just destroy in the central midfield with Dotson, Gregush, and Alonso. I don't think it's actually it's almost been too defensive for them. I think they're better when they actually defend with 6 and put those 4 attackers out there, and you try to get one of them to help at least a little bit.
Does that mean Dotson doesn't start?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. Or if he starts, he probably starts on a wing.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. Again, I am not sure what to predict in this game. The one wild card that we have to mention here, we been kind of dismissive about the Galaxy. They are 9-15-2, I want to say, since about the end of April. They, for a long stretch, were one of the very worst teams in the league. They've only lost 1 of their last 5 games against playoff teams, and since the Gold Cup break, they've been much better against playoff teams than they have been against non-playoff teams. They're 4 wins, 4 losses, 2 draws against playoff teams. 3 of those losses were back in late July, early August. The last 2 months, they have been tough to beat when they have cared.
2 things I'd throw in there is it was the week before decision day at home. Minnesota won when Dotson came off the bench and brought a ton of energy. Mm-hmm. I cannot remember the opponent.
RSL.
RSL. So I love the idea of having Dotson, whether you choose to bring him in on the wing, central midfield, fullback, whatever it is. The other X factor I'd want to just bring up is Montaner versus Pavone. That, to me, is the best 1v1 matchup because there's a huge possibility that Pavone dominates him. And with Zlatan's presence, and he's going to float to that far post, you guys talked about it, but Eichel Parra doesn't have the ability to get over as quickly, or it changes the entire Minnesota shape because Montaner gets scared in the first few seconds and never pushes up the
overlap,
field. Whatever it is, that to me is the most interesting matchup in this game.
And that's why I think they have to go with a 4th actual attacker in that front 4 because you can't rely, if Pavone's on left wing, you can't rely on Metner getting up to overlap.
Next game, 10 minutes on the Seattle Sounders hosting FC Dallas, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, FS1, Fox Deportes, TSN, and
TVA Sports in Montreal.
Matt, you got the opening question?
Yeah, who are the Seattle Sounders? They had
Don't
three.
make me
No,
do
I'm
this.
serious.
Don't
No.
make me do this.
Absolutely, Bobby. They had 3 shutouts in their last 4 games. I don't think they had one in about 12 games before that. Maybe even more. They had one between like the end of or middle of May and this run since the middle of September. They've brought their numbers behind the ball. Is this it? Are the Sounders
Well, one thing I've talked about a lot, and it's more evident now than ever with
2016 MLS Cup style?
Well, this is more evident now with the national team, right? Is that you need to make a decision before a game. Are you going to be the team that blows things up, or are you going to be the team that tries to create? Because it just is a little switch in your head. And if you want to be the team that tries to create, right, then all of a sudden you're thinking about where you're going to get on the ball and your body shape and what your next pass is. And that is how you evaluate yourself. If you're the team that plays against the ball, then you're just like, screw it. The only thing that matters is getting pressure, winning my tackle, winning the next ball, getting it forward. You can find ways to play soccer in that, right? Which is what a lot of teams do. It doesn't have to mean you have to play ugly soccer, but that's just your first priority. That's what really makes your heart beat within a game. And the Sounders for years were the second one, right? They were a team, or maybe the first one. I don't remember what order I did. They were a team that wanted to play with the ball. It seemed important to me late summer that they flipped that. That all of a sudden you don't have Chad Marshall, you don't have Ozzy Alonso. At that point, they didn't have Svensson or Roldan. They didn't have a bunch of guys. And they adequately made that switch. As you pointed out, they dropped their lines. They got more compact. I believe it was the Atlanta game where they tied them or won.
They won.
Or maybe it was Portland. It was one of those big games when they just bruised the other team. They played that way. So they're a team that can still play. But for me, Matt, their first priority actually needs to be an against-the-ball team that then has some magicians that can create. That's who the Seattle
is that who they can be at home in the playoffs against FC Dallas?
FC Dallas.
Because you remember what FC Dallas did a month ago when they went to CenturyLink.
Yeah, I mean, that's a theme. For me, that's a theme of the Western Conference, right?
No one wants to play with the ball.
Who can play the way that they want to play? Who gets sucked into a certain type of game that doesn't make them comfortable, that doesn't suit them?
There's a really big possibility that Seattle doesn't play that way because they're not allowed to, and they still win this game. Because Dallas is inexperienced, because Dallas lacks a lot of finishers, because Dallas will make a mistake, you assume, at some point. And this is the best group we've seen for Seattle all year because they're healthy now. Jordan Morris is in decent form. You've got Roldan and Svensson, which allows Lodero, I think, more freedom to roam and play however he wants.
For sure.
And
like, it's not even I think, it's definitely
right. Well, he does anything what he wants to anyway. But yes, I agree. And then you've got Rui Diaz, who is a legit finisher. And
not recently.
He was in the postseason last year, though. That's he wasn't going in, and then he was huge against
He's
Portland.
no Nelson Valdez. Let's just establish that on this show.
Yes, absolutely. But that's where the entire formula is for them. And then the last piece is the fullbacks getting forward.
And the only thing I want to point out to go back to can they do it? One step to doing it for me is you got to start Jordy Delem. Move Christian Roldan to the wing. Forget Harry Shipp. Forget Jovan Jones. Forget Victor Rodriguez, who are probably superior players to Delem, especially when you want to play on the ball. And I do not rate Delem as a possession player. That's even better because he is disciplined. He has ground coverage. He wins his duels, and he will stay in front of the back four, and he will ensure that there is always a block of him and Gustav Svensson.
But is this the game to do that?
Yeah, that's my point. Yes, because you have enough players, right? You have Jordan Morris. You have Rui Diaz. You have enough players to create. Not to mention Leardom and Brad Smith flying forward. Your job is to not get countered. Your job is to be able to punch FC Dallas in the mouth when you need to, and Delem is the right choice for that.
For you, is there any question marks in the Dallas lineup, mainly central midfield? Where do you play Jesus Ferreira? Where do you play Paxton?
Or do they both play? I mean, let's start there, right?
Those are all huge questions. I think if I was Luchi Gonzalez in this one, I would go with Acosta as slightly deeper than Cervania and Pomykal in front of him, but it would be deep lying. It wouldn't be like an aggressive front foot 4-3-3. It would be like, okay, I'm going to draw a pretty deep line of confrontation. I'm going to use those 3 guys to win the ball, and then send runners into space.
So who is Ferreira start up top in this?
He might. I think he does. Zdenek Andrasic is a better finisher than him right now. He's proved it for club and now for country. Andrasic presents real problems for this team defensively, for his own team, defensively, because he doesn't really cover a lot of ground. He's not great at closing down distribution, and this is something we talked about in ETR. If you suddenly allow Kim Ki-hee in particular to start picking his passes, then the Sounders are able to get upfield earlier and with momentum, and maybe before you have your line set.
On top of Andrasic doesn't have the threat to beat you behind, so Kehe's
unless you're playing Sporting Kansas, unless you're playing Smoke Park Rangers.
Right. But that allows comfort for Kehe to step through because he knows Arriaga's not going to get beat over the top.
So I actually do think you probably start Ferreira, and then it's Michael Barrios and Santi Mascara on the wings, I guess. And if it's not Mascara, then it's Don Baggi. And like with every one of those players, it's a big shrug as to whether or not they'll actually put the ball in the net. And frankly, it's the same for the midfield players. Like, I love Paxton Pomykal. He's a really well-rounded, young player, and I think he's going to be, one of the best players in this league next year if he's still here. But he's not a goal threat. And Cervini is not really a goal threat in that sense. And if Acosta decides he is, then that actually presents more trouble for Dallas than it does for anybody they're going against. So it's this weird situation, not weird, but it's this fairly predictable situation where both teams, I think, are going to be more comfortable trying to get the other one to come up the field and then use that space in behind.
Well, what's interesting about it is they're going to play in the counter. We agree on that, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to draw their line of confrontation behind midfield. One thing that Lucci does, though, is he plays a 4-5-1 defensively, which for me is not the best way to play a counterattacking lower mid-block because you just don't have enough options to fly forward. So given the fact that he's going to play the 4-5-1, I think you need to play Ferreira central and Pomykal wide, right? You can't play Ferreira wide in that. What I think he should do is play the 4-4-2 with Pomykal next to Barrios because they are the two best players in transition. Or you just go for it and you go Baggi and Barrios. But
why wouldn't you go Jesus and Barrios?
Because Jesus is not a transition player yet. His pace, the way he thinks about the game, he doesn't get the ball. It's not advantageous to have him central.
Interesting. But the problem then is who you're starting in midfield. So that's
what I'm trying to say. I just told you. Cervania and Acosta.
And who's on the wings? You're playing actual wingers?
For the way I would do it,
yeah,
I would do Ferreira on one side. I would probably start Baggi and bring Mosquera in as the Ilsinho difference maker in the 60th. He's not Ilsinho, but it's that same idea. I would rather him come in the 60th minute than Baggi. Have Baggi wear them down, and then
hope that Mosquera can beat someone 1v1
in the 60th minute, and have my two best transition players highest in the.
Let me ask you this, Guy, for both of you: how high does Ryan Hollingshead get in this game? Because he's been their best. Yeah. He's been their best finisher all year.
And I think that goes into the factor of who you start at left wing, because I still think you want him to push up the field and create, whether he pinches in, which they've done at times, and kind of connects with the central midfield, which gives them another confident player on the ball in a tough situation in Seattle. Because we haven't really talked about Brian Acosta's never been in this scenario. Cervania's never been in this scenario. Yep. You don't know how they handle that. But on top of that, you have to take advantage of the fact that Leardon will play as a winger. Mm-hmm. You have to, at some point, hurt them because their fullbacks are playing alongside Raul Ruidiaz. And I wouldn't want to take that away from Hollingshead because I don't think it's necessary. Which is why I would wonder if you do 4-4-2, you play Pomykal as quote-unquote one of the wingers, but he's pinching in at times as a third center mid, and you're dropping into a 4-5-1, or he's holding space on the wing because in a situation where Hollingshead goes forward, he'll make the right decision to hold space.
Yeah. It's like what Jose would do is he would put, or what Ancelotti did with AC Milan, is he would put Cervania on the right and he would put another defensive midfielder on the left
and just allow
to stop Seattle's overloads, and then you just have, and then it's just whatever you focus in on those two things.
Yeah, it's an interesting game. I think it's interesting for Lucci because he's got to deal with the mental side of like believing you're going to win, but I think he also has options like this because he can take a risk because they're not supposed to win. They weren't supposed to be here, and they're not supposed to win. So I think it could be fun for him to take that risk and say, let's see if this works, because if we get a win, I mean, at that point, he's way exceeded expectations. Yeah. So why not try what you kind of have in the back of your mind in this one? I'll be wrong, and he'll just play exactly what we think. And
do we all think Seattle's going to win?
Yes.
Yeah. Last one, 10 minutes on RSL hosting the Portland Timbers. That game is where, David?
10 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday night on ESPN News at Rio Tinto Stadium.
And TSN.
And TSN.
And
I didn't have those memorized. TVS Sports.
Oh, yeah.
And ESPN Deportes.
And ESPN Deportes.
Are you here for RSL?
No, not really. I'm pumped about it. Am I here for RSL?
Let me rephrase
yeah.
it. What would have to happen for you to be here for RSL? Is it just that Savarino comes out and you can see within the first 3 minutes he's playing like he did at Copa America, and he's like, I'm a $15 million attacker?
That, and there's a world in which Damir Krylak's movement really troubles the Portland center backs, and then
So Damir Krylak's your number 9 if you're Freddie Juarez.
I don't think there's a choice, is
Okay.
there? Does anyone think there's a choice right now?
So I've said this before, that if RSL is going to definitively be the team that plays on the break, then you move Rusnak to the left, you have Krylak in behind Sam Johnson, and you just use Sam Johnson as that threat. In an ideal world, I would put Corey Barrett on the left instead of Rusnak. But in this game, I actually have no idea who's going to dominate possession, and I would just go with the most predictable 11, which is Barrett on the left and Rusnak and Krylak as the dual 9-10s.
My problem with Sam Johnson isn't the elements he brings to the game. It's purely his individual quality, that he won't finish opportunities. He's not good enough. That was I think we've had this conversation of, well, Krylak didn't stretch the field. They needed to bring in a forward to stretch the field, and it just hasn't worked.
But are you saying Corey Baird is more likely to take a half chance than Sam Johnson?
No, but I didn't say start Corey Baird. That's my point.
So who do you play in the left?
Well, no, that's a different. Yeah, no, that's different. I'm saying it's center forward, though.
Right, but the option is...
Right.
There are really only two options at this point. Bofo Salcedo probably isn't going to start. João Plata probably isn't going to start.
Yeah.
It's either Krylak and Rusnak up top with Barrett on the left, or Rusnak to the left and Johnson and Krylak up top.
Yeah, and I would play Baird on the left.
Okay.
Because I think you still want Krylak closer to goal in this scenario than you want Baird on, or than you want Sam Johnson on the field, whether he stretches the back line or not. And then you have the option to bring him in if you see that that's the option you need. But I trust Krylak, obviously, to show up in the playoffs because we saw what he did last year, but just in general as a player. And I think there's a possibility with, obviously, I think Savarino's X factor, his ability just 1v1 to take guys, especially if it's Villafana, who I don't trust that much. And then you're coming in onto Iloma, who I like as an individual, but isn't always spaced correctly. But there's also the chance that Rusnak starts to find some opportunities because Krylak drops deep, lays him off, and he gets to burst through in that spot. Or Krylak occupies Chara at times, and that gives Rusnak openings in zone 14 to take some long shots where he's dangerous. That's everything from me.
Yeah, you just spilled it all out there. It felt like half of that was assuming that Portland is going to allow RSL to counterattack, and the other half was Portland sitting deep and not allowing RSL to counterattack. You don't know which Portland you're going to see.
No.
I would be shocked if Portland came up the field.
Have you ever been shocked before?
I have. I've been shocked repeatedly. I shocked myself sometimes.
See?
Why do we think that they wouldn't just copy what they did last year during that playoff run?
For the same reason they don't do it all season.
Yeah, because it's not fun.
But
there's this belief that there's something else.
Well, yeah, and you had the regular season to prove that you can't do the something else, and it's not time for fun now. It's time to win.
So do you think that if they do sit and counter, that they're clear favorites in this one?
Yes. And no disrespect to RSL, who have improved year over year, and who've done a really good job of beating the teams that you should beat, which is a clear sign that they are locked in and they are engaged just about every single weekend. They don't give up soft goals, or rarely give up soft goals. A bunch of their young players have improved. They've checked a lot of boxes. They don't beat playoff teams. They don't beat teams who are more talented than they are. Portland are more talented than they are.
I'm not saying you're right or wrong. I'm just going to rebut with this. In West versus East, but they beat Seattle 3-0, a depleted Seattle side. They beat NYCFC at Rio Tinto. They beat Philadelphia 4-0 at Rio Tinto.
And those were all short rest, squad rotated.
They beat Atlanta at Rio Tinto. They beat Toronto at Rio Tinto.
They have 5 wins. They have 5 wins over playoff teams all season long, which is the least of anyone in the field. And they have only 1 win against a Western Conference playoff team. They are 1-9-2. They had in mid-August, I want to say, or maybe early August, they had a chance to, with their remaining schedule, to prove that they were the second best team in the Western Conference by a mile. They had that chance. they lost 4 straight games against Western Conference playoff teams. They outplayed Portland. They lost 1-0 because Portland has Diego Valeri. RSL doesn't. They outplayed LA. They lost 2-1 because
that one stands out to me as exactly what you said, which is they outplayed them in every facet they wanted to. They did not finish opportunities that Zlatan finished. And you watched that game and you were like, there's no world in which the Galaxy deserve to win this game. There's a very big possibility you walk out of this Portland RSL playoff game with the same feeling.
So, Bobby, how does RSL win this game? Or does Portland lose it?
This game to me is the biggest quality of a team versus the quality of individuals game, because RSL have become a good overall organization. The way they defend, their ideas in counterattacking, the way they work as a group. What Matt keeps pointing out is that they have none of the best 3 players on the field, right? And that matters come playoff time. So part of it, if you're RSL, is you just hope that Sebastian Blanco doesn't bang one upper 90. You hope that Diego Valeri doesn't play the perfect free kick. And you hope that Jefferson Savarino runs away from Diego Chara once. I don't know how to factor that in to hope that Sebastian Blanco doesn't have the best moment of the game. But other than that, if you're RSL, you just have to have faith in what you're doing. Your 4-4-2 block at midfield, Savarino and Barrett on the break, and Krylak with his late runs into the box, and you don't overthink it. You trust what you have worked on for 3 months.
How much does your opinion change if Valeri, let's just say, doesn't play?
I think it changes quite a bit. I mean, he's Diego Valeri, and I know I don't see as much of a drop-off in his performance as a lot of Portland fans profess to see. I feel like I'm being gaslit a little bit, kind of like how Seattle fans were doing this to me last year, telling me that Ozzy Alonso was washed up, and I watched Ozzy Alonso play, and I was like, he's definitely not washed up, and now you watch him play for Minnesota. Like, people telling me Diego Valeri's done, I think you're crazy.
It's gotten harder for him, right?
He doesn't defend much.
This is just, this is what happens around the world, where teams sat deeper on them, they made them work harder, and it got tougher for their attackers, especially in a way that Diego Valeri doesn't thrive. He is best in transition. Teams didn't let him transition. There's going to be a natural decline in what he can do.
For sure. Also 8 goals, 16 assists. So
16 assists is weird, though. That is just a really weird number because of secondary assists and set pieces. And Chris Reifer did a nice Twitter thread on this.
I mean, fair enough. I like Chris's work a lot. I think he's wrong about Valeri's decline. It would matter a lot if he doesn't play, but I think he's going to. And regardless, this is kind of Sebastian Blanco's team now anyway. And Sebastian Blanco showed in last year's postseason and down the stretch here when he got healthy again and got into that lineup again, Portland went from not scoring or not even generating danger for like 3 straight games to like expected goals over 2 for their final 4 games of the year. They just hit the woodwork 7 times. So I think Portland's playing well, and I think they're a little pissed off, and I think they have better talent. And by the way, they're 6-3-2 in their last 11 road games. I'm not going to overthink it here.
Here's what I just want to add to that, and this is something we talk about often with young players or potentially players on the cusp. And at some point, there has to be a few moments when they are legitimate studs, right? Why do we hail down to some guys? Because they are the man when it comes down to it. Aaron Herrera. He's going to be 1v1 with Sebastian Blanco. He's had a very good season. He's been with the U23s. I would put Justin Glad in this. And I don't think you're wrong for liking those players, but at some point, especially with what's going on in the national team, step up.
Yep.
Aaron Long has been on the cusp, had a bad year. There's no reason for West Ham to increase their bid. Aaron Herrera, Justin Glad, we'll talk about those 2 players now, play well against a star Argentine player and make teams want to come get you, because otherwise we can't talk about this, who is the next move abroad, unless you dominate a game like this.
Yeah, I think
and I'll say it applies to Jeremy Abobasi as well.
Yeah, definitely, especially with Fernandez out. But for Herrera, there's also a chance that he could be a difference going forward because Villafana gets sucked in because of moments.
He should not go forward.
But
you have Savarino in front of you. You stay. But protect the zone and let Savarino.
If Savarino's not on.